he is a kind of moral and psychological paradox in a way because it's almost like I think of the fine tuning argument for God. You and I have debated religion in the past. I don't remember you putting any weight on the fine tuning of nature's constants as proof of the existence of God, but many have done that, and so just to remind people that if the gravitational constant were slightly different, there'd be no formation of galaxies and all the rest, and if the charge on the electron were different, well then and many things would follow that would be incompatible with life, and it turns out that these constants are tuned within the tiniest fraction of a hair to values that are compatible with the universe as we know it, and any change would make things worse. And it's almost like he's like the virtues I listed a moment ago. It's almost like he's got these tuned to their worst possible settings, but this doesn't actually make him the worst possible person. I mean, when there are people who are objectively worse than Trump.
This is the line. This is the contentious quote.
This is the fine tuning argument.
Yeah, this is where the Sam is saying that Trump is worse than Hitler. The speech comes from.
You got to love the setup, though. It's the fine tuning argument for Trump. You're
right.
Like, he's fine tuned like a monster to be the worst person ever devised.
Tuned to their worst possible settings, but this doesn't actually make him the worst possible person. I mean, when there are people who are objectively worse than Trump. You just compare him to Hitler. Hitler is worse, but the things that actually make Hitler worse are actually virtues, right? I mean, like courage.
What?
You can already see where the.
Oh my goodness!
You can already feel the triggering, everything's spreading up. You just go, oh.
I'm not triggered. I'm astonished.
Yeah.
I'm amazed.
So here we go.
I'm in no way triggered.
I just mean like in general. People hear, as soon as they hear that, they're like, ah. Oh.
Well, no, Sam Harris is about to talk about the virtues of Hitler. Like, what the fuck?
I feel like someone who's just come across the new horizon, the event horizon. It's Sam Neill.
You're seeing Lawrence Fishburne in that hell dimension ripping his eyes
Here
out.
it is.
What am I looking at here?
Here it is.
Hell dimension. What am I about to experience?
Yes.
Tell me, Sam. Holy shit.
Like
Okay.
commitment to something beyond yourself, right? Like if you add those in generic virtues
Wait, I think
to another one.
I think we skipped a little bit.
Are actually virtues, right? I mean, like courage and a commitment to something beyond yourself, right? Like if you add those in generic virtues to an otherwise malevolent asshole, well, then he becomes a more competent, more self-sacrificing, malevolent asshole, right? So evil gets amplified by virtues in certain contexts. It's almost like Trump has everything dialed to its least respectable level. Right? He is not a courageous person. He's not a competent person. He's not a consistent person. He's committed to nothing beyond himself, right? And that's why but this makes him a kind of again, it's almost almost
I know you have a hard time
Yeah,
describing what you're trying to think of, Sam.
He just realized what he'd said was just, he realized he jumped the shark there. He's like, what argument exactly am I making here? Am I making an argument that he's better than Hitler or worse than Hitler?
But do
Where
you
am I going with this?
I think this is a very strange point that Sam is making. It's a very bizarre point, but it's a very narrow point. And do you understand what he's saying, Adam? Like, what is his exact point that he's getting at?
I don't think he knows what his exact point is that he's getting at.
I'm not sure.
He's saying that virtues on a bad person can turn them into a worse person because those virtues can actually make them excel at being bad. That's the argument that I think he's making. Right.
Yes, and he's saying
But he's put himself in this situation where he's saying, well, Hitler has all of those qualities that made him excel at being bad, but Trump, like, and then he's starting to think, well, wait a second here. Is Trump worse than Hitler? Or I'm trying to make an analogy that Trump is worse than Hitler, and I've kind of boxed myself into a corner here because he doesn't have any of those virtues that actually make him excel at being bad.
Well, no, I think he's pausing because he's trying to create some weird categorical distinction of how he's trying to place Trump here. But the argument that he's making, which I think people weren't really understanding on Twitter, because Mike Cernovich posted like this 10-second
out of
clip,
context,
was that he's not saying, obviously, it doesn't sound like from his argument, he's not saying Trump is worse than Hitler. He's saying, as you said, that a bad, evil person can have things that are either neutral or thought of as virtuous traits, like courage and commitment and blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
And you put that in an evil person, and that's going to allow that evil person to, commit more evil on a much wider scale.
Yeah,
as Hitler
exactly.
did, or as Osama bin Laden did.
Right.
And he's saying that Trump doesn't even have those positive virtues that could be twisted towards evil. He just has a bunch of completely negative virtues. And that's why it's a weird argument
because it's a wash. It ends up becoming a wash. It's like, okay, so he's not that dangerous.
It's a big wash, but it is identical to a poll meme, which is that there's a little meme ball. You guys know the meme balls and it says that, I'm sure, of like, it says, when you get upset that people say that Trump is Hitler because Trump isn't as good as Hitler. That's what I feel like
this is. That's exactly what it is.
It is sort of what he's saying, and in a very that's a silly way of what he's saying, yes.
But yeah, what's the extremist way, but isn't that kind of the same argument?
Yeah,
you're making a meme ball argument. Thanks. Okay, right. Sam. All right.
I just behind the scenes stuff. I have always suspected that Sam Harris edits his podcast. He edits out his like stutters and verbal gaffes.
The pauses.
There's a lot of verbal gaffes in here. I pulled this off of Andrew Sullivan's podcast because I just think it's funny that all of Sam Harris's verbal gaffes are in here. I bet when he uploads this on his channel, and I don't think he has yet, but I bet the verbal gaffes will be gone. So
well, no, it was funny because Sam had originally, he has like, you can get like the first 30 minutes or so on his website or YouTube or something. And then, but on Spotify, he has his whole version of it, but it's an hour and 36 minutes. And this is an hour and 43 minutes. And I went to the end and they both ended the same place.
So it is the verbal gaffes that he's
right. So that means that he cut out like 3 to 6 minutes of pauses.
That we're gonna stumble through just because I think it's fascinating, and I like the idea of some editor that Sam Harris pays to edit around his Hitler gaffes. And I just imagine the guy going, "Oh my fucking god!" Like I could just solve this whole problem for Sam Harris right now just by editing this whole section out. But no.
But they didn't edit it out.
Natural degree to which he manages to.
Right. Let's go back.
You're loving this, Sitch. You're loving.
Well, I like to hear because it's such a weird argument. I'm always fascinated when people make these like very weird arguments that are like so narrow and so specific, and I know that no one will understand them like what they're saying. They'll all just like go off in like a completely different direction because that's what it sounds like, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Yeah.